Hello there, I'm Greg, and welcome to my channel, Midnight Oil Software, where I talk about digital art and game development using Unity. So in today's stream, what I plan to do is work on my Ninja Eggs game. I've been working on a Moon Patrol remake for Ninja Eggs. And in the previous stream, I did some refactoring around the speed control manager so that I could support vertical scrolling, the scroll speed manager, I should say. And I also made it so that the game would get faster and faster as the player advanced through successive milestones to make it more difficult over time. And what I thought I would do today is shift gears a little bit. I do want to do some more gameplay tweaks, as you can see down here on my agenda. But I thought before I do that, I'll do some drawing today. I want to create some scorched earth visuals for when bombs don't create craters, but they do hit the ground. Or even when they hit craters, I want them to leave some visual impression that they hit. So I'm going to draw some scorched earth visuals. I'm also going to draw a landmine, which I want to pull into the game. So I'm going to switch over here to my drawing tablet. I'm going to put on my handy dandy little drawing glove and take up my pen. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my terrain PSB file. So you see here I've got my crater and crater background selected. But I'm going to start with my normal terrain. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all that layer content. And so you can see it puts that little selection border around it. I'll zoom in a little bit so we can see it better. And making sure my audio is working okay. Everything looks okay here. So I've got that selected. I'm going to hide that selection because I don't want to see those squiggly lines. And I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to rename this. I'm going to rename it Scorch Marks. And I'm going to select the digital airbrush. I'm going to make that layer a multiply layer. And so multiply basically says, as I add any color to it, it's going to get darker and darker and darker. And I'm going to sample that color and maybe just make it a little bit darker. So now I'm going to take my airbrush, make it pretty big, and I'm just going to start painting and I want it to be a nice gradient. I want it to be dark around the edge, but then kind of gradually get lighter and lighter and lighter. Like that. And then I think I'm going to make this brush smaller. And I'm just going to like pull out some little jagged lines a little bit. Make it a little bit darker around the very edges and places. I don't want it to be too uniform. And then I'm going to switch over to the Distorto brush. Make the brush real small. I'm just going to pull out some jagged lines out of it. If I back it out, how does that look? I think that looks like some scorched earth. All right, I'm happy with that. I'll save that. I want to deselect my selection. Let's see. Cancel, select none, and then I will save. Now I'm going to hide those. I'm going to show my crater and crater background. And I'm going to select both of those layers. Select layer content. And I'm going to create a new layer. I want to move it above crater. I'm going to call that Crater Scorch Marks. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to hide that selection. I'm going to take the digital airbrush, make it kind of a big brush. Just start adding a little bit of darkness here. You know, I need to make that a multiply layer for that to really show up. Not that one. Let's see. And I'll pick the Distorto brush again. Oop. I was distorting the wrong layer. Don't want to mess up that edge there. Make a thin Distorto. Probably don't need all this detail for something that's going to be seen like that, but I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I think I'm done with that file. So now I want to create a new file. Can't see what my finger's covering up. I think all that looks good. And I'm going to hide that canvas. I'm going to turn on the grid. Where is that? Here we go. Layout grid. Yeah, that looks good. And I'm going to pick kind of a grayish color. Maybe a tad lighter than that. I'm going to pick the fill brush, the smooth fill. I'm going to turn on mirror painting. So you can see that little green line in the middle. Anything I draw on this side is going to draw on the other side. So the first thing I want to do is draw a flat bottom. So I'm going to select line painting, make this guy a little bit bigger. I'm going to go from here to here. That gives me a good flat bottom. I will turn that off. And now I'm going to draw a little shape kind of like that. I think it looks pretty good. By the way, I'm working on the landmine in case that wasn't obvious. I'm going to fill that. I think that looks good. And I'm going to call that body. And I want to create a new layer behind that. and I'll call it ridge, for a lack of a better word. I'm going to go to kind of a bluish color, but not real saturated. And I'm going to turn or switch back to my smooth fill brush. And I'm just going to go like that. Fill that all in. I think that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to add a layer behind that. And I'm going to call it button. And I'm going to make it red. Okay, I'm kind of happy with that as the beginning of my landmine. So I'm going to go back to my body, select layer content, show hide selection. I'm going to create a new layer and call it shading. I'm going to turn off mirror painting. Pick the digital airbrush. I'm going to sample that body color, make it just a tad darker. And my light source is going to be coming from the upper left. So I want my shading to kind of shade mostly on the right side and under the ridge from that little ridge that's there. And then on the bottom, of course, it'll be shaded. Maybe go a little bit darker. And just a tad around the edges. I like that. I'll create a new layer. I will set it to screen. That was multiply, wasn't it? Oh, no wonder it didn't look very dark. I'm going to have to back off the opacity of that. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so this is going to be highlights. Of course, it's not spelled correctly, but I don't care. And I'm going to make that a little bit brighter. And just start adding a little bit of what did I do there? Change my brush. This pen has buttons on it. Don't know which camera to look at. And sometimes I accidentally push those buttons when I'm drawing. So this kind of gives it sort of a cylindrical appearance. I think that looks good. I'm going to pick the ridge, select layer content, hide that selection, create a new layer, call that shading, make it a multiply layer, sample that color, zoom in a little bit, and make it a little bit darker. And same thing, I want most of the shading to be on the right bottom and under that button a little bit, and just a tad around the edges. Create a new layer, call it highlight. And I'll sample that brighter color, make it a little bit brighter, set it to screen, composite layer, shrink my brush down. Starting to look a little 3D there. Do the same thing with the button. Select layer content, hide that selection, create a new layer, set it to multiply, Call it shading. Sample that color, make it a little darker. Okay, create a new layer, set it to screen, call it highlights. Make it a little brighter. Okay, I'm kind of happy with that. So I'm going to merge these down to button. I'm going to merge these down to ridge. I'm going to merge these down to body. And I want to add a layer for the button called flash. Actually, I'm going to add an overall layer called flash, but I don't want to do it yet. What I want to do is I want to have that thing flash like it's a light flashing. So I'm going to create a layer that's just really bright with a bit of a glow. And then when I pull it into Unity, I'll add a point light to it as well. I think that'd be really cool. But the first thing I want to do is add some texture. So I'm going to take my body, select layer content, create a new layer, set it to multiply, and call it texture. Or as Mark Kistler would say, texture. Okay, so now I'm going to use the pepper spray brush. Make sure that my feature is set really low, but bump the brush size up. And I'm going to use my mouse for this. I'm just going to tap. You know, I don't want red texture. Let me sample that color. Okay, that looks okay. I want my feature size to be a little bit smaller. Still looks pretty big. Okay, and I'm going to take the diffuse blur brush, and I'm just going to, no, it's too much. I just want to blend it a little bit. I don't want to completely destroy it. And I want to kind of follow the texture, the contours of this. And let me try the pixel brush. I'm really not seeing much of anything there. Oh, I'm seeing some stuff get at it now. Okay. Cool. I'll try my coarse oily blender. And I'll just try and blend that a little bit more along the contours. And I'm going to turn that opacity down a little bit. I just want to add some subtle texture. And maybe I'll try and add another texture layer, so to multiply. Maybe I'm going to try this chalk brush. And chalk uses papers. I'm going to open up my papers here. And let me just see what I've got here. I've got polyplay wool, worm lace, petri dish. I'm trying to find something that might look like sand dollar marking. That's interesting. Rough paint. Let me see what that looks like. I'm just going to paint over this. I kind of like that. I can change the scale and the angle. I'm going to turn that opacity down. I kind of like that. That gives it some really nice looking texture. So I'll merge them down to body. And I want to do the same thing for my ridge. Create a new layer, set it to multiply, select, go back to my ridge, select layer content and hide that. Let me try that. Oh, I want to sample that blue color. And maybe I'll try that pepper spray brush again. I'm hitting the wrong layer. And maybe I'll add some highlight texture. Set that to screen. Go a little brighter, bring that thing, my brush down a little bit, and just tap. And mainly in the area where there should be highlights, maybe a couple little places here. Take my diffuse blur, just turn that opacity down. I kind of like that. I'll merge that all down the ridge. And go into the body. Actually, I've already done the body. I'll do the button. Select layer content, hide it, create new layer, multiply, zoom in, sample that color, make it a little darker, pepper spray some little pieces of texture, do another one, pick the chalk. Do another one, set it to screen, go back to the pepper spray. Okay, diffuse blur. Don't want to completely destroy that. Just break it up a little bit. How does that look? Pretty good. I think we got some decent texture. We got some good shading and highlights. I'm going to save this as a PSD. I'm going to call this landmine. Make sure I unselect my selection. Okay. Need to open up Photoshop. Photoshop is opening. Okay, I'm going to take this background layer, unlock it, and delete it. And I'm going to save this as a PSB file. And let me open up this guy. And okay, so I've got scorch marks and I've got crater scorch marks. I'm going to save this as a PSB. But I'm going to call it scorch marks. Alrighty. I'm going to go into Unity. I'm going to bring my microphone over in front of me again. I'm going to go into Unity and I'm going to see if I can't pull in those images. So I need to find those in my Windows Explorer. Drag them in. So let's do the landmine first. So I know I'm going to want to change this to 1024. Actually, what did I do for the lasers and stuff? Yeah, ooh, they're still 2048. That's surprising. That's 512. Okay, I'm going to make it 512. I don't think it needs to be that big. I'm going to drag one into the scene and just see what it looks like. It's probably going to be real big. Oh yeah, it's huge. So I'm going to pick that over here. I want to look at that in the sprite pixels per unit. Let's scale it down. Let's try 300. That's still a little bit big. Well, compared to the buggy, it's really not that big. What do I have the laser set at? 100. And the other hazards are 400. All right, I'll make it 400. Just to be consistent with the other hazards. Okay. So landmine. The sprite is configured. I probably should have merged all those layers down. Although I do want to flash. Well, let me play around with that. Pull this back in here. And I'm going to, actually I'm going to delete that. Create an empty landmine. And I'm going to add a sprite renderer. Reset its position. And I'm going to, in the sprite renderer, let's see. Huh. Let me look at this. If I just drag that in there and select it, there's 4 individual sprite renders. So I'm going to delete all this. I just want a single image for that guy. And I'm going to go back into Photoshop. And I'm going to merge. Let's see, what is that? That was my shading. All right. See if it'll let me drag it in while it's open in Photoshop. All right, that looks better. Why is there still a body? Well, regardless, that's what I want. Okay, I'm going to rename this landmine. Well, before I do that, let me do my adjustments to the sprite. 400, 512. Drag that in. Dragged in the wrong thing. Drag that in. Why is it doing that? That is not what I wanted. I just want the body. Well, that worked. Okay, so I've got the landmine there. And I want to zoom in on that. And I want to add a point light. Actually, I don't want to call it flash. I'm not seeing that show up. Oh, okay. I am going to modify this image and add a separate flash that I can turn on and off, but this will be a good start for now. Okay, so let me look at my prefabs. So I've got turret would be probably a good one to look at. So it's going to have a sprite renderer, it's going to have a polygon collider, it's going to have a destructible script. Actually, yeah. And it's not going to have a turret, and it's not going to have scorable. So let's first of all add our polygon collider. That looks good. And do we need a destructible script? Because it's not destroyed. Well, I guess it will be destroyed by the player. The player is never going to be able to shoot it, that's for sure. But if the player runs over it, then it would die. And I'm definitely going to want to put it on the hazard layer. Why are there two of those? Okay, it's going to want an explosion prefab. So what did I use for... Scrolling explosion and mine explode for sound. So scrolling. Okay. Effects, probably. Scrolling explosion and mine explode. All right. Destroyed by layers. Let me take a look at this guy. Player and player bullet. So it's just going to be player. All right. So I think that's enough just to get me started. So I need to create a prefab from that. I want to go into my terrain manager. Let me delete that. Go into my terrain manager, and in my hazard prefabs, I'm going to drag that puppy in there, and let's give it a shot. By the way, if you haven't already, click that like and subscribe button, and if you want to be notified when I go live or post another video, click that notification icon. Ooh, it's getting faster. Oh, I still have it set to increment really fast after each milestone. Why am I not seeing any landmines? All right, let's see. Do I have any errors in my console? No. Boulder Hill turret landmine. And yet I saw no landmines. Alrighty. Am I really that dumb? Apparently I am really that dumb. Exclusive. We'll see what that does. Go ahead and close Photoshop. Go ahead and close Corel Painter for now. Not seeing any landmines yet. I still got that bug where pterodactyls don't have bombs after they respawn. Okay, time to put a breakpoint in here. And actually, before I do that, I want to increase the chance of having a hazard. Double the chance. And I'll turn off my enemy spawner, just to take them out of the equation. Ooh, I'm going to have to adjust the position of that thing. Oh, yeah, I always misunderstand inclusive and exclusive. So one thing I need to do, though, I just noticed that stop playing. That landmine is up floating off the ground. So I need to pull in a piece of terrain. And it's going to be parented to the terrain. So I'm pretty sure that if I go in here, like if I grab one of these guys, I think the terrain manager positions it. So let me go look at that. It sets its position to local 0. So as long as I have it so it's positioned relative to the parent, then when it's set to vector 30, it should be fine. I like that. It's kind of set into the it's kind of set into the terrain. All right, let's see what that does. It's still floating. Why are you floating? I need to give it a negative offset, that's for sure. So let me let it play. I will pause it and I will adjust it appropriately. Okay, so I'm wondering if it's overriding this, though. Because this is definitely 0. I think it's the way I drew it, because if I look at these guys, I want to see how they're positioned. Oh, before I do that, go into my landmine. So he's at 0, 0, 0. So if I look at this sprite, as compared to the landmine, the landmine is definitely up higher. I'm thinking I'm going to have to pull it down in my image. Or when it enables, I can just move it down. Yeah, I drew it farther up in the sprite, and I'm trying to use it the exact same way that I was using the other. So I might be able to cheat here. Do I really want to do that, though? I think it's easier just to fix it in the image. But I'm getting toward the end of my lunch break here, so it looks like I'm going to have to fix this tomorrow. I do want to take a real quick look at if I was to pause this, select one of my terrain sprites, and bring in some scorch marks. Let's see, I'll create, let me just stop this, create an empty game object on my normal terrain. What's the art? I want to be in the prefab. $124. Okay. Yeah, so I'll be able to turn that on and off. as appropriate. And I'll turn them off by default. And let's pick the crater. Actually, let me just pause it on one of those. So that will work. Okay, I think I made some decent progress today. I'm going to wind up this stream. So if you enjoyed this or found it helpful, click that like and subscribe button and click the notification icon so you can be notified the next time I go live. And if you have anything in particular you'd like to see me cover, or you have any questions or comments, please drop something in the chat and I'll try to get back to those as soon as possible. So thanks for watching and have a great day.